What's up, everyone? On this episode of Better Listen Up with me, Evan J. Thomas, I have a former classmate of mine who has a story to tell. This memoir takes readers on a vulnerable, raw, gut wrenching journey into the heart and mind of a sensitive, often lovesick teenager in his explorations of marijuana, LSD, alcohol, and ultimately opiates and heroin. This harrowing journey brings us among junkies and thieves, prostitutes and police, heartbreak and love, into Japan and back. As he navigates the Dantian realms of all addicts face, he ultimately comes face to face with his inner child and inner warrior, and the unlimited possibilities that emerge from the power of hope and surrender. He is the author of Undercover Angel, a memoir. Welcome to the Better Listen Up with Evan J. Thomas show, author Dave Kehnast. What's up, man?
How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
So was that good enough for you, or do I need to do it again?
Oh, that was great.
All right. So you and I have talked over the years. You and I met up this past, or was it a week ago, Saturday at our 30th reunion. And you and I have talked over the years about my depression. Didn't really get too much into it, but you've reached out when you saw that I was struggling. So with you and over years of recovery, where you are now, what made you start to write this memoir?
Well, the memoir was something that was it was kind of inside me. It was something that I was, you could call it an assignment from my higher power or God or whatever, the universe, however you want to say it. But it was just something I couldn't ignore. And I started it well over a decade ago. And then in the last year and a half, I want to say, I got really serious about it. Like I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna not do this, but I have to choose one of those and be cool with whatever my choice is. And so I chose to finish it finally.
So you've gone through basically every possible category. You had addiction, recovery, you've done it all. You've done spirituality, alcoholism, you're into God now, you're doing all that. You even have your own little you talk to people a lot about their struggles. So seeing that and seeing where you were, did you have anybody that kind of helped you get through stuff, or was it just all your own being to be able to do that?
Well, it was a community, a fellowship, in an anonymous program that was the original sort of major helping hand. And I'm still involved in, a traditional recovery community. So that's where it began. And then it moved on from there into, the colleagues I have in the coaching world. And they really saw the potential, their relationship is more to potential versus problems. And by the time I met this other sort of group of people, I was ready to take everything a lot further than just the standard recovery community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So I have family members that have gone through heroin addiction that are still alive, which is fantastic. The fact that you're even here is awesome as well. Walk us through kind of some of what made you get into more spirituality after all of your recovery with that.
Well, the recovery itself, the recovery itself is spiritual in nature. It's still the spiritual backbone of all of my recovery is, again, rooted in programs that shall remain anonymous. I'll just say that, right?
Gotcha.
And I want to keep it that way, the anonymity. That was really, and still is, the foundation of all of it, of my recovery. It always comes down to, am I doing my will or what something else that knows more than me's will? And very often those wills are the same, but very often they're not. And so, the spiritual path is really not an easy one. It's a simple one, but it's not an easy one. And it often involves contrary action. I'm not a religionist or anything like that, more power to those who are, but so now it's kind of evolved into kind of a new thing, but also in a lot of ways the same thing. Like for instance, like I was late for this interview, right? And so that you could relate to that through the lens of spirit. Like I didn't do what I said I was going to do in that moment for whatever reason, doesn't matter. And so the only job that I have there is to clean that up with you and to move forward. And so these just very simple principles that we can allow to guide us if we'd like.
So looking over your shoulder there, I see you got some surfboards or a surfboard. So I know that's something you're really been into since you moved to the West Coast or San Diego, if I can recall you and I talking the other day. What with surfing kind of brings you away or takes you away? What about that kind of changes you?
It's surfing is a very like multi-faceted kind of experience. And but the actual, people talk about surfers and like how surfers kind of get in fights a lot. Surfers have beefs with one another. A lot of surfers are really kind of tough guys, honestly. And so there's this sort of reputation, like go home, locals only, this is our beach, and there's a lot of realness about that. You know what I mean? There's a lot of reality to that, to what you hear. But what the competition is ultimately all about is the competition for the wave. And on the face of the wave, there's on a good wave, on the face of a good wave, there's this experience of absolute universal oneness of connection to the entire universe, and these handful of second experiences that you have. And so you're essentially chasing that experience, so a good session of surfing is 10, 15 waves, 20 waves is astonishingly good. And so you're talking about 10 seconds per wave at the absolute most.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at 200 minute and a half, 2 minutes on the face of a wave that you're spending 3 hours in the ocean for in pursuit of. And so there's something profoundly spiritual in that, if that makes sense,
It does. And it's basically like a crapshoot, obviously, when you're out there. And not only that, but you're probably going against other people that are out there surfing, trying to hit that same wave. So you kind of got all that to deal with as well.
Yeah, and that's why the fights break out.
Exactly.
Like, you took my wave. There's a very specific etiquette to it. And if you kind of violate that, you're labeled the term as you're a kook. You can't get good without being a kook. So you got to kind of work your way up all these various pecking orders. It's a trip, man.
Oh, geez. So
yeah,
it's
totally.
like almost anything. You just have to kind of get there and get in with the types and the locals to kind of get all that. So since that has kind of worked for you, and I want to go back to actually the writing of the book. So coming up with the real stories that you have, it's always hard for me to remember a lot of stuff that I had happen in my life, even though I never had the recovery or drug addicts or anything like that. So how did you kind of come into and evolve from the stories that you have, the real life experiences?
Wait, say that again. Ask that again.
Just like, how did you remember? How did all this kind of come back to you? Because obviously there's a lot of stories from your younger time.
Yeah, it really did come from the recovery work, because the recovery work is really a deep dive into everything.
Okay.
And as soon as you like remove the drugs or the alcohol or the whatever, like then you're kind of left with a heck of a lot of feelings you got to deal with. It's all feelings. It's all stuff that's happening inside of you. And as you start to unpack that stuff, things just start to pop back into your mind. And so all of that stuff comes from like a lot of therapy, a lot of all kinds of stuff. People asking me really challenging questions I didn't know how to answer. And then once I had the story, right, then it's just, we'll write it down, and then polish it and make it as good as you can,
And throw in some bigger words and fun stuff to kind of make things sound even better, even though it's legit. Obviously, you just have to use the wording to kind of get it right. So was there a moment or moments in your life where you kind of saw yourself from the outside and was like, I need to fucking change myself now? What were those moments that you had?
Yeah, there's a scene kind of towards the end of the book. I remember there was this other guy on the west side of Chicago that I used to pal around with. He's complete shit show of a human being, right? And I was a shit show of a human being. And I remember him talking about how a junkie is always going to be a junkie. You're never going to quit. You're never going to quit. You'll never quit. And I remember saying to him, I'm going to quit. This is right towards the very end. And him looking at me and saying, you'll never quit. You can't quit. You know, you can't quit. And then this little voice inside my head was saying, fuck you. You know what I mean? Fuck you. Watch me. And so it's in someone telling me that I couldn't do it. The same with the book. Somebody years ago told me I could never write a book. And I was like, fuck you, I'm going to do it. And so it's that antagonism that was the fuel, you know what I mean? And turned into their naysaying turned into a healthy fire within me that I chose to let it sort of ignite me on the path, you know?
See, and that's kind of how I roll too. I love when people challenge me and tell me that I can't do things. And then it's like, give you a big fuck you and just kind of do it and show them. I mean, that's just one of the most epic things you could do to somebody who naysays you to begin with. So
Right.
I want to go into your time in Japan. So I haven't gotten to that part yet. I just started reading it since you sent it to me a little earlier. But tell me about your experience in Japan and what changed you there.
Well, so that was really just a god awful existential nightmare. I essentially came to, you know, in Japan, and then I had to manage I had to manage being a stranger in a strange land and manage being mostly I had to imagine I had to manage being a complete alcoholic, you know. And so I'm wandering around the streets of this city that I still don't know the name of, and I don't know where it is. I have no idea where it is on a map. If you showed me, I couldn't tell you when I was there. I could tell you when I was there if I really thought about it, but that was a year before I got sober, a little over a year before I got sober. And that was really that was was referred to as moments of clarity when I started to really realize, like, you're in serious trouble, dude. There's no getting out of this easily, you know? And that was, you know, just an existential nightmare, like existential, like my existence was being questioned or challenged or something. I was, and then that, you know, 6 weeks after I got back from there, I was locked up in Cook County Jail. You know, I wouldn't recommend going there. It's an awful place ever. Worst day of my life was in that. I spent about 2 days there. That was the worst 2 days of my life. And just, but in the process of going through all that, there were these like zingers that kept saying, like, I kept getting these messages, like, there's no way out of this thing. There's no way out of this except by, you know, connecting with what I just choose to call God. Right. And then getting into conversations with people about that, you know what I mean?
So being that you went through all this in Japan, not really even knowing where you were, kind of what you just said with were you living on the streets? What were you doing there? I mean,
yeah, I had a job to teach English there. And what happened was I got on the plane and I started drinking because they were serving free drinks. And then that took me where drinking takes me. And so I was living in this like sort of hostel sort of like environment.
Okay.
Like a little hostel sort of community, like kind of like a hotel, like a dorm kind of, with other people that were doing the same thing there. But I was not, you know, I was to say I was sticking out like a sore thumb would be about the biggest understatement that ever could be. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I mean, it's the worst thing. You know, I talk about when I'm locked up in Japan in that story in the book, or I'm locked up in Cook County Jail in that story in the book, I'm talking about how in a lot of ways the experience in Japan was far worse than Cook County Jail. Because Cook County Jail, I know where I'm at. I know I'm probably going home. Mm-hmm. I know my bail has been posted, or it will be posted, and that the judge will probably let me go. I could technically walk home if I wanted to. You know, like if they let me out, I could technically walk the 30 miles or whatever it was back to where I was living. But in Japan, that was impossible. Right. And so I ended up basically waking back up out of a blackout back in Chicago with very little recollection as to how I had gotten there.
Ooh.
I mean, I pieced it all together, obviously. I mean, it's not like I didn't know, but it was, it's like a night out at the bars. You wake up and you piece it together and you remember most of it. Sort of like that.
Kind of get back. So how did you finally get out of Japan? Was there like another moment of clarity? Like obviously with your alcoholism at the time there, did that kind of wake you up, or what pushed you out to get home?
Yeah, there was, I just had this very clear feeling, that, I was going to die. It was very clear. And I say that in the book that like this, the shadows from the stucco in the ceiling had contorted themselves into shadows of angels of death, and that they were antagonizing me. And so I read or the cracks in the ceiling or something like that, it contorted themselves into shadows of angels of death. And that was all I mean, literally, I was thinking about Angel of Death, the song Angel of Death,
Slayer.
Yeah. And so I went out into the streets, and I somehow, somewhere found some people that led me to the airport. And then I bought a ticket on a credit card and then flew home.
And again, we're talking to Dave Kehnast, Undercover Angel, a memoir. So he's been talking about his book. Was there a time, and I'm going to go a little deep with what I had, was there a time in your life where you were just like, I'm just going to end it, it's over, and I need myself to be in peace? Did you ever get to that point? Or
yeah,
obviously you never got to that point physically, but mentally, were you there?
Yeah, I mean, I lived there for, it's like there's a line in there's a Jerry Garcia song, and he says, you don't want to live, but you're chicken to die. It was like that. You don't want to live, but you're afraid to, pull the trigger on yourself. I mean, I have a friend in recovery. He shot himself in a Walmart parking lot and lived. The cops chased him to a Walmart parking lot. He shot himself in the head and lived.
Ooh.
So that's not an uncommon story,
No,
so
I've seen that, heard that before. Mm-hmm.
Totally. And so, yeah, I was there for a very long time. I still go there sometimes, I'm not a perfect human being, life is not easy.
And you're always going to be in recovery, because that's just what happens as an addict. People think that you can just stop and kind of go on your own, but no, there's things that could possibly trigger you to kind of fall back into that. Now that you've kind of moved past that, what are you trying to bring to people besides the book to kind of bring to light your struggles and trying to get them help?
I've had a couple podcasts. I have a Course in Miracles podcast that's a daily reading of the Course in Miracles lesson of the day. And that basically what that course says, as any real religious text even would say, is that with God, with some sort of higher power that you relate to, however you choose to relate to something like that, like anything becomes possible, right? And it doesn't even necessarily need to be. I'm not preaching for that. I'm not preaching at anybody. But the purpose of the book is to show you, no matter what happens, like you can recover from, you can claw your way back from anything. And if you die trying, you die trying, and so it's really just I'm just a storyteller. That's kind of my orientation. That's kind of how I convey and get information across to people that has them look at things. So really, it's just about telling stories that inspire others. And, if you're going to tell a story to inspire others, it's got to be a good story. You know what I mean? You got to keep people engaged in it. And so that's kind of what I'm here to do in a lot of ways. I do all kinds of work to help people. My coaching work isn't related to recovery really at all. It's a separate thing. But still, even there, it's like I've been coaching now for 12 years and supporting people to overcome whatever challenges they have in their lives to become all that they could be in every area of their life. That's really gratifying work.
I was going to say, so since you have the gratifying work working with other people, have you seen what you've brought to other people? Have you seen people kind of flock to you and kind of ask you for help? Have you had that kind of clarity with other people as well?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, when it's like I get people reach out to me on Facebook a lot from the most unlikely people that I would ever think would reach out to me, and requesting guidance or my opinion or whatever it is, and just making and some of them end up paying me and some of them don't, and that it doesn't matter at all to me. But the job is to be essentially a helper in the universe. And so, when I'm posting on Facebook, this is a story of something that happened, or this is something that happened in my life. How does it apply to you? That's just to get people's wheels turning regarding what's going on in their lives.
And it's great with what you've done with your memoir, because now once I get kind of through it, I think I told you I've kind of been wanting to write one myself. So that's kind of pushing me now to even go farther with what I want to do with mine. So your story, just alone being able to recover from everything that you've been through and that you're still here. And now you're kind of, I'm not saying pushing it, I'm saying you're helping other people kind of find their clarity as well. So that's a great thing that you're doing. So I'm going to throw one more little thing out there. So I haven't gotten into, like I said, many of the other categories or the chapters, but the love and heartbreak. So is there a missed time in your life that you wish you had, or thought you had somebody there that then you kind of ruined, but hope you still had at this moment? I think I said that right. I don't even freaking know.
You mean, is there anyone I'm still into after all these years?
So, like, obviously there was that one that got away. You don't have to name names, but obviously
No, I hear you. As far as characters in the book, no. But in my life, yes. I think, unfortunately, like heartbreak, it's just sort of a fact of life for a lot of people, and that's in so many ways. And heartbreak is rooted in abandonment, and emotional abandonment. It's all related to oftentimes it's related to inner child stuff and things that happen to us when we're very, very, very small children. We have no control over it, and then our picture of the world gets painted as a result of that. And so, yeah, there are a few. It's just kind of the way it is.
There's always a few, especially when you're single.
You know what I'm saying? So whatever.
Getting older.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to ask this to kind of finish it off as well. What got you started in doing drugs? I mean, was it situations? Was it the people you hung out with? Was it people you saw? Was it family? I mean, what kind of prompted you to do it?
It was just typical
Circumstance.
high school. Here, you want to smoke this? Okay. And then finally, no, I'm cool. No, I'm cool. No. And then sure, couldn't hurt. Why not? And want a beer? Sure, why not? The other kids are doing it. It's the same way that everyone else starts. And there's not any rhyme or reason to why my story became so extreme and pornographic, essentially, debaucherous and horrific, but it just did.
And it's pretty crazy hearing stories, because obviously I have a lot of friends in the music industry,
right,
are recovering addicts, and hearing just their music and their sound. You're very into music as well. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about it. Is there any like bands or stories from some of these musicians that kind of resonate with you on what you've gone through?
Well, I mean, yeah, like on all sides, like there are, I know like a lot of punk rock people, right? And I've seen a lot of them in the thick of their insanity, and I've seen a lot of them die, a few at least. And I've seen some of them end up in recovery after not dying, but coming very, very close, and so that whole punk rock, like fuck me, fuck you, fuck the world, fuck everything, that whole punk rock thing, like it's real fun until it isn't. It's real fun until the world starts fucking you back, and that's what happens is like you go by the time it's too late, it's too late. You know what I mean? Like by the time you've gone too far, you don't realize you've gone too far. And then all of a sudden there's no getting back. And so there's actually this guy from one of my favorite punk rock bands of all time, this band that used to play in Colorado that I used to see lots of time, like all the time. he was one of my primary mentors in getting sober. And I didn't know he was up there on stage singing about recovery stuff. I had no idea.
Okay.
Nobody did, and so that was a person there are a few people like that I really connected with,
So that's really interesting. Like you just said, you resonated with his music, and you had no clue that he was even singing about recovery, when in your mind you probably, subliminally figured that that's what it was, but you never figured it out.
Totally. And he would always be out at the bars. There's a very vibrant punk rock scene in Fort Collins, Colorado, still is. And he would always be drinking water in the back, very content with himself, very talking to people, not acting the fool. And you could just tell he was very grounded within himself, knew who he was, wasn't afraid of life.
The situation. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And still to this day, I'm afraid to go to a show sober just because of social anxiety. It's not about wanting to drink. It's hard for me to be around people. Even like the reunion last week, it's very hard for me to be around people. Always has been. And so, that was really inspirational, to rockers, rockers in recovery. There's a lot of them. I think Eddie Van Halen was sober. I'm pretty sure he was.
When he died, or when?
When he died.
Yeah,
he was sober like 20 years or something.
Yeah. So when you came back to Chicago 2 weeks ago for the reunion, and you saw a lot of people that you grew up with, did that kind of strike any memories of kind of what you went through early on?
For sure. I mean, in so many ways, because the people that you like knew when you were a little kid, there were a few people there that I known since kindergarten. And at least 3 people that I can immediately think of, maybe 4 or 5. And so the people that have been there with you when life is happening to you as a little kid, before you have any say in the matter, that brings up stuff. I think that's why people avoid reunions. It's because they can't be with the triggers the memories that are going to emerge from being with that person that, although they're an adult now and quite possibly have changed quite a bit, was still a very specific way to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're exactly right, because that was actually the reason why I wasn't going to go to the reunion, was because stuff from 30 years ago kind of triggered me, and I didn't want to go, and I didn't want to deal with certain people. But you know what? I said, fuck it. I went and I had an amazing time. And obviously I got to talk with you. I got to talk with several other people. It's just one of those things where I had to get it out of my mind and just kind of move forward. And everything behind you happened. It already happened. It can't happen again with those same people. So kind of make new memories with those people, which I did. So there you go.
Awesome, man.
So it worked out. So tell us about the rest of your book. I mean, where can we find it? Obviously, do you have a website for it, or where can it be purchased?
Yeah, you could go to undercoverangelbook.com, and there's actually an associated podcast also. I have 10 episodes released. It's called the Undercover Angel podcast, where I'm diving into the deeper psychological mechanisms that were at work within me in particular, but that can be at work within anyone, can be working within anyone. So yeah, you could check that out if you want to you can get the book on Amazon. You can contact me directly. I just put in a big order. So I'm trying to fight Amazon basically and just shipping them all out by hand, because Amazon, they make things very convenient, but at the same time, they're going to take their Amazon chunk.
Sure they are. They're going to take a little chunk of money there.
Exactly. So, more power to them. You don't have to go through them. What's that?
Where can you hear the podcast? Is it on?
It's on the website.
It's on the website. Is it on like Spotify and everything?
Yeah,
too?
it should be. I just got it registered. It should be on all major platforms by now.
Yeah, dude,
Spotify,
I gotta start listening.
Apple,
yeah. Fantastic. So, gotta say, man, thank you for jumping on today. I know it was actually we had this book for a little bit, about a week and a half, 2 weeks, but we made it happen. You're here. You got to talk about it. We got to promote it. So make sure you guys check out Undercover Angel, a memoir by Dave Kehnast. I've always said the other way around. So when I said it before, it was kind of weird to try to say it correctly. So Dave, man, awesome that you're doing this. Awesome that the book is, I'm going to be checking it out the rest of the afternoon because my softball game has been canceled. So I get to read. So there you go.
Awesome.
Appreciate it, man. And again, thank you guys all for watching. Better Listen Up with Evan J. Thomas. Dave, any last words? Anything you want to say?
No, I just want to thank you. I want to apologize again for being late.
It's 15 minutes. It doesn't matter.
It's 15 minutes though, in my mind, you know, in all honesty, thanks for having me on. It's really an honor. Thank you for doing a really good interview. And, you know, to those listening, if anybody listening is struggling with anything, you can, you know, if you have you could contact me, you know, at this, for all I care. I mean, I'm here to help. If anyone is struggling with drugs, particularly drugs and alcohol, I am available to have conversations. There's no monetary gain for me in any of that. So you can do it. You can do it. You can get over this thing that is seemingly impossible to conquer. You can. It won't be easy, but it is very simple. It's very, very simple. Recovery is very simple.
And to make sure people are able to find you, his last name is spelled Kehnast. So you can find him there. Like you said, social media. So again, Dave, appreciate everything. Again, Undercover Angel, a memoir, and you can find that on Amazon or Dave directly. So again, thank you for joining me, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Rock on.
Rock on. Hell yeah.
Always, dude.